Chapter 12. I see Adam, fire in his eyes, determined. There he is again, blood slowly oozing from his wounds. It was only days after our picture taking that Adam hinted to me that the resistance was on the move. We're planning something very big, he told me one morning. Men have escaped to the Allies and told them of the gas chambers, and still they do nothing. Your photos may arrive too late to save this last batch of Jews, although you'll be glad to know that the fellow who escaped with them still hasn't been captured. The next morning, SS men on motorcycles roared up to the factories we were working in. Everyone was ordered back to the barracks because Crematorium 4 was burning. It had been blown up, sabotaged. We marched back, heads held high. Later that day, we heard that most of the rebels had been killed, but not before killing a few SS guards first. That day, they gave us our rations when we got back to the barracks. Unheard of, really. After all, if someone should die before night, then those rations he'd eaten would be wasted. That was why rations were given only after a full day's work. They must have been very upset to forget that rule. I ate my quarter loaf of bread slowly throughout the day, not all at once as I usually did, and Father had some time for extra bartering. Father and I had quickly learned that if you simply ate your rations, worked, and followed orders, your lifespan would be a few months at the most. You would grow so thin and wasted that you would be chosen for the gas chamber in the regular selections the Nazis made. Father made sure that he kept up a brisk trade in the spoons and knives he had made at the factory. New arrivals would trade him a slice of bread or something else he felt we needed. Sometimes he managed to get us potatoes, sometimes a bit of sausage, even some cheese. We were given 2 ounces of sausage 3 times a week and 2 ounces of cheese on Sunday, and people would trade it if need be. Knives for cutting bread were very much in demand, as were spoons for the soup, though only on Sunday did the soup have anything of substance in it. On other days, it was brewed from weeds and thistles. Father kept us from becoming so weak and emaciated that we couldn't continue. The following day, we were sent back to work as usual, the uprising easily contained by the SS. Our group was ordered to carry boxes of supplies from the yard to the factory. When we were out in the yard, Adam whispered to me, all the others have been captured. They'll give me away under torture. I don't want to be caught and tortured. I won't give them the satisfaction. I'll have my revenge. I whispered back, Adam, your revenge will be seeing them defeated. It can't be long now. They may not discover you. Don't do it. I've made up my mind, he answered. Good luck to you, Daniel. Remember me. And now, stay away from me. I could see that he would not change his mind, so I quickly moved away toward some crates. An SS man stood directing the unloading, his back to Adam. Adam moved up on him quickly, quietly, and pulled the guard's pistol from his holster before the guard could stop him. He shot the SS man at point-blank range, then turned around and fired at 2 more guards who were close by. He wounded one, the other killed Adam with a hail of machine gun fire. I crouched behind the crates, only too aware of the wild hatred this would instill in the SS guards. They would cheerfully massacre all of us in revenge. But no, for the moment they seemed occupied in getting medical help for the wounded guard who was still alive. In the meantime, the rest of our group slipped back into the factory and to our jobs. I couldn't stop my hands from trembling as I worked. I knew that as punishment, they might well take Adam's work squad, line us up, and shoot us all, or hang us publicly to make an example of us. There were often bodies hanging from the gallows as we marched to work. Still, I wasn't angry at Adam. I admired him. He had chosen his way to die. I took a deep breath. If the rest of us had to die for that act, then so be it. I stopped trembling, and I vowed that if they came for us, I would be shot fighting too. But no one came, and our day continued as usual. That night, as we marched back to our barracks, I resolved to see Erica. Passing her twice a day and not being allowed to talk was unbearable. So the next day, I again made a note out of cloth and grease. It said, fence, and I lobbed it at her as we went by at the end of the day. This time, I saw her bend over and pick it up, pretending she had dropped her violin bow. After we had been given our rations, Father and I headed for the electrified barbed wire fence that separated the men's camp from the women's. We had to walk past 10 barracks, but finally we reached the fence, and there she was. We dared not get too close for fear of getting in trouble with the guards, but we called to each other. I love you, Father called. I love you too, she cried back. Mother? Father asked. She shook her head. I won't make the next selection, she called, but you two must. Also, we might be moved. There's a rumor. If you're moved, you won't have to go through the selection, I called. Perhaps it'll be for the best. Try, Erica, try. A capo from the barracks near where Erica stood rushed toward her. "Get away from there!" she screamed, swinging her club. Erica was fast. She moved too quickly for the blows to strike, but then she was gone, and Father and I melted back into the crowd of men at the barracks, not wanting to attract the attention of the guards. In my mind, I can see Erica. "Try," I'd called to her. She was so thin she couldn't have weighed more than 50 pounds, but her face had that particular spiritual glow that I knew so well, which had died for a while when she thought she was alone. Now, just knowing we were alive had helped her. The next day, her spot was filled by someone else. My heart sank. Neither Father nor I knew what it meant. Had she been sent to the gas chambers or moved out of the camp? That night, I lay in my bunk, teeth chattering, head bursting with pain. I felt terrible. I was burning hot one minute, freezing cold the next. I had typhus. Father bribed the capo to let me stay in the barracks while I was sick. We all knew that being sent to the infirmary was usually a death sentence, because Nazi doctors were trained not to heal, but to select those too weak to work for death. I was delirious and in a fever for 5 days. Avoiding typhus was very difficult, because we lived in the most horrific squalor. Our blankets crawled with so many lice that it often seemed like the blankets themselves were alive. They moved. We were allowed to wash once a day in a trickle of water, but the toilets were just long slabs of wood with holes in them, and they were always filthy and overflowing. We deloused and cleaned ourselves on our day off every other Sunday, but it made little difference. Still, I was lucky that Father had things the capo wanted. He took me off the work detail and allowed me to lie alone in the barracks all day. I dreamed of Mother in my delirium. It was strange. I'd been so busy trying to stay alive, I've had no time to mourn her death, but those 5 days were filled with her image. She scolded me for not wearing my overcoat when I was cold. She nagged me to eat some more coffee cake or noodle pudding. I'd forgotten those things existed. She hugged me to her and told me she loved me, and when I came out of my delirium and told Father, he said that she had been with me every moment of my illness and that she had pulled me through. Her memory? I asked him. No, Daniel, her spirit. She was with you. I just know it. I could feel her sometimes late at night when you were crying out. She would soothe you and you would quiet down. I didn't know what to make of what Father had said. I'd never been religious. I don't think he used to believe in God. But if he felt Mother's presence, he must have believed in something. Why would this experience, which should make any sane person not believe in God, do the opposite to him? And yet, somehow, I felt he was right. I didn't know how I felt about God. After all, how could he let us suffer so? Still, somewhere inside me, I knew Mother had been with me. I came through my wilderness very weak, but feeling more at peace with myself than I had before. Perhaps Erica was right. We were here, and to despair was useless. And then I thought of Rosa. Thoughts of her washed over me in such a rush of pain and longing, I could barely stand it. As I had done with Mother, I tried to put her out of my head, but from then on, they both stayed with me as a reminder of good, and as a reminder that love still existed, even here. And then about 6 weeks later, near the end of November, our capo rushed into the barracks screaming, "Out! Out!" We were counted and marched out of the barrack. The Russians were nearing. Before we left, the Nazis dynamited the gas chambers and the crematoria so that no evidence of them would survive. They gave us a quarter loaf of bread the day we marched out of Auschwitz, and that was all we ate for 3 days. At first, we marched 5 in a row, but quickly the line began to thin out, and it became apparent to the Germans that this was another way to kill even more of us. As soon as a prisoner fell, either from exhaustion or simply because he had tripped, he was shot. Bodies were strewn along the road. I realized that this march would kill most of us, that the escape from the gas chambers was not necessarily an escape from brutal death. We must concentrate on only one thing, I said to Father, putting one foot carefully in front of the other. Watch where you step. Don't allow yourself even to stumble. And that is what we did. Soon those who were too weak to walk begged for help, and everyone who could ended up supporting one another. I supported a boy just a year younger than I who turned out to be from Lodz. His name was Peter. Of course, I asked him if he had known Rosa, but he hadn't. From the moment we began to talk, we liked each other, and we quickly became friends. He had been in Auschwitz since the summer of 1944. Because of his blonde hair and blue eyes, he and his brother had been able to hide in one friend's house after another in Lodz until finally they were captured just a few months ago and sent to Auschwitz. He too wanted to go to Palestine. He had trouble walking because his wooden clogs had created huge blisters on his feet, and they had become infected. He could barely hobble along. Father had managed to get a soft material to go inside our shoes so that they didn't rub. This may have saved our lives on the march. We slept outside when we were allowed to sleep, covered only by the blankets we carried. We were still in our prison uniforms, nothing more, even though it was only around 30 degrees and it often snowed or sleeted. At night, it went down to 5 or 10 degrees. After a week, we finally moved into a town and were loaded onto this train. Town folks looked right through us as if we didn't exist. German civilians stood on the platforms waiting for trains. At least half, perhaps more of our original number had been left behind on the roads, dead. When we got onto the train, somehow Peter was put into a different car. I hoped we could meet up again wherever we were going. The train chugs through Germany, heading west toward the Weimar region. We traveled for days, again, with almost no food. Both Father and I had become very weak. Finally, we are ordered off the train and are met by prisoners who assure us that we will be taken to have real showers and warmer clothes. We are marched to the camp. We pass through a gate over which a sign proclaims to each his due. We are led to a building to be disinfected. There, we are forced to strip and leave all our precious possessions behind. Father and I reluctantly part with our bowls, spoons, knives, and the warm cloth in our boots. And then we are put in a room to wait. We wait forever, it seems. Some faint. Finally, we are moved into another room where we are shaved and again subjected to the torture of disinfectant thrown on our cut skin. Then, a warm shower and new clothes. We are given jackets along with shirts, and I am grateful for this small mercy. Next, we are lined up and registered. When it is his turn, Father makes sure he stresses all the different kinds of work he can do. I do the same. I even tell them I'm a photographer. Where are we? I ask the inmate who takes down the information. Buchenwald, he replies.